So today we have Chris Borghese on the show. He's CEO and the founder of the Marriage Revolution, and he is a certified marriage relationship behavioral consultant and an ordained pastor. Welcome to the show. How you
Thanks,
doing,
Peter,
Chris?
for having me. What an honor. Wow. The main
Absolutely.
man, Peter.
So glad you can make it here. But what we want to know is, how do you make this happen, man? You're in it. You're in the midst of it. First of all, you are a husband of, actually, what is it, 28 years?
28 years. It'll be
28
29
years.
years.
You and Tara. And then you're a father. You've got 3 kids. You've got 2 grandchildren now.
Yeah, too. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are a man that is a family man. You love the Lord, and I guess just share from your heart, just like what brought you to this place that you have such a passion for working with couples and families like this.
Wow. That's a great question, bro. Well, first of all, I can tell you that I love what you're doing. The 7 pillars of the mountains of the influence. Um, we want to be able to influence the 7 pillars of life. You know, the church, the family, the arts, the media, education. And there's the funny thing is, not the funny thing, but the interesting thing about each of these mountains is that we all know that God wants us to influence those arenas. He wants us to rise up the church. He wants to be able to influence and because of his goodness and make an impact. But you know what, one thing that is common to all 7 mountains? Can you guess what that is, Peter?
Um, Inform me, please.
It's people. It's people. God uses people in order to impact those mountains, in order to impact our marriages, in order to impact the world. God uses people. And if you just realize you have Moses, you got King David, you got Solomon, you've got Mary, who actually carried the birth of did the birth of Jesus. And so God uses people to influence others. And the problem there, what I've seen and why we're in this space is that so many people, they want to make an impact. Their heart is good. They're hungry for God, and they just want to make an impact in the world and to the mountains, and it's good. But what happens is that just like on our marriages, and just like I did in my marriage, is like we lead with the task. We lead with doing. We lead with, we got to get this thing done, right? And then we will talk about relationships, or we'll build relationships, and then after we get to all the push, the paper pushing or whatever needs to be done, then we'll talk about relationships. And this is why I'm so passionate about, once I got this revelation that God uses people, if I can start with people but yet get things done, then I will be successful. And this is one of the reasons why I think we're not making an impact as well as the church should within the 7 mountains and within our marriages, because we lead with task. We lead with doing. And if I can say a quick story, I did that for many years. For the first years, 10 years of my life, or 10 years of our marriage, I was so task oriented. I'd come home and I'd say, hey, to the kids, the 3 kids, did you get this done? Did you get the homework done? Did you get your chores done? And I'd talk to Tara, hey, did you get this? It was all about that. I just ran them over. I just ran them over because I took all the things that had to be done during my work, that I just naturally just went home and did the same thing. And that's not how it should be. We lead with people, and we then get things done. So that's why we do what we do, is because I really want to help make an impact to the 7 mountains, into marriages, into families, because we want to lead with people. And that is the key.
Absolutely. So it really is like the foundation of, it's about the relationship. It's not just,
Yeah.
it's not a means to an end. It's about working with one another in conjunction. What was really interesting is we actually recently had on the show with us, it was the founder of YWAM. It's Lauren Cunningham. He
Oh,
actually, he actually was one of the people that God had given a real vision and dream about this whole 7 mountains concept of being able to really influence the world for Christ. And one thing that he brought out actually in the interview that I didn't really ever hear before is that he talked about the family mountain being really the kind of the cornerstone of all of them. As far as like, if you don't have that one, then what's the point, right? I mean, if you can't have it at home, because I think so often, like whether you're business or like ministry, we get so involved in narrow focus on that thing, and you already touched on that of just we've got this thing we're trying to hit. I guess, and as far as being able to avoid that, how can we, like as business leaders, as entrepreneurs, as artists, as other professionals, how can we make sure that we get to make sure that that intimacy and that connection with our spouse like can actually maintain, and not where you go into a place where it's about to crash and burn?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. Like I said, a 10-year mark in our marriage. And just so you know, divorce happens mostly, the biggest segment is at the 10-year mark. And here is why. Um, because most of our, um, at the beginning of our relationship, we are so focused, we're so attracted to one another, and we want to be able to make an impact. And we just love the fact of something like the other person. We love what they're about. What we don't realize is that they're exactly opposite that we are. We don't go into it thinking that they're going to be opposite. We don't say, you know what? I want someone who's exactly opposite as me. No, it just happens that way because they have what we don't have. And so we're attracted. So at the 10-year mark, usually this is why it's the number one, it's one and two marriages end in divorce at between 8 and 11 years because of this reason. It's our differences that um, are now highlighted. And if we don't understand those differences, then we go different paths and we think, oh, I married the wrong person. No, we have to go back. So to answer your question, one of the things that is very crucial to be able to sustain that intimacy and to be able to have the right focus of people first and then task is the ability to know yourself. You know, if you know yourself, leadership in business and in life starts in the home, right? But it starts with ourselves. So if we can't, this is why the Bible talks about, some of the different qualifications for an elder. If a man can't lead his own home, and this is it, the person needs to learn how to lead themselves so they can lead others. And that is, as a man, we want to lead the family. We want to lead in our business. But if we can't lead ourselves, then it's like a foundation. It's going to crumble. And the ability to lead ourselves, and here's the key, here's the concept, is knowing, the Bible talks about who we are positionally, right? That that we're children of the King. But also we know in Psalm 139, where it talks about how we're fearfully and wonderfully made. And so being able to understand how we're wired allows us the ability to be self-aware so that we can, because if we're not self-aware, we can't become aware of what we're doing wrong or what we're doing right. And so to maintain that intimacy, when I can lead myself and I know who I am, and then by understanding how my wife is wired, how my children are wired, how the people at work are wired, then I have the ability to put myself in their shoes, to see life the way they see life. And that's called empathy. You know, learning how to love other people before the output, right? So many times in business or as we climb the mountain or in our homes, we want to lead with the output or we want to lead with the task. And this is how you maintain the intimacy because now you become self-aware. When you understand who you are really through the human behavior. And that's why I geek out on this stuff, Peter. I really try to understand. The more I understand myself, the more I can understand Tara. The more I understand myself, the more I can understand how she views life, because now I can understand her. because now I'm mastering myself. I'm understanding what makes me tick. So then I can understand what makes her tick. And when I put myself in her shoes, then I'm able to then reduce the conflict and allow myself the ability to actually have conversations with her, which is where the intimacy fails, where within the home and with the children, intimacy fails when we fail to understand how the other person is wired. End of story. If we don't know that, let me just real quick. If we don't know ourselves, we're going to make decisions that could be wrong because we're basing it on false information. It's like that foundation. If the foundation is cracked, then we're going to make bad information. Let me give you a story. One time, Tara and I, this is a funny one. We were at a presentation for a timeshare. And the end of the story is we bought it. We bought it. And it was many years ago. And it was one of the most regretful decisions we ever made. Now, nothing against timeshares. And if you have all those, it's really good. It's cool. It's all that. But for us at the time, it just was not good timing, right? So we just made a bad decision. But if we would have known more about who we are and how we spend money and how we're sold and and how we make decisions, if I would have understood that about myself and I would have understood that about Tara, then we would not have made that poor decision. It was a bad financial decision at the time for us. And so, because that, see, so it's so important. Everything we do is based on how we're wired, how I read the Bible. I look at it because I'm relationship oriented. I look at these stories and I place myself in the story and I see how people feel and all of that. Where someone who's more task oriented, more calculated, will try to understand what the Greek word means, try to understand what the Hebrew word means. So everything we do is based on how we're wired. So that is how we can maintain that intimacy, is knowing who we are and how we're wired.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's not necessarily the first thing I would think of when I'm thinking of how do I improve my relationship with my wife, like knowing myself. It's like, tell me how to fix the situation. Just tell me what to do. Like,
Yeah.
what should I do? Should I get the flowers? Should I get the dates? What is it? But actually knowing myself and how I'm wired really is what actually can help me understand how I view the world in
Mm-hmm.
my wife and in her then. But then you can react more in empathy. It's only after you really know yourself better. Is that right? Or
Yeah, no, that's right, because it gives you the first ability to become self-aware, because that's the key to empathy, is being able to be self-aware. And it has to start with yourself, and then you can learn about your wife. Because, like, let me give you an example. I'm high wired, I'm high strung, I have lots of energy. My wife is not like that. I'm very fast paced. Tara is awesome. She's one of the smartest people she is probably the smartest person I know. But see, that's her personality. She's slow paced. So just that little tweak in me knowing that I'm fast paced and she's slower paced has really made a difference in our marriage, because the fact that when I wake up in the morning, I'm waking up at 4:30 and I'm ready to go, and I've had coffee, and when she wakes up at 6:30 or whatever, I'm like ready to tell her, blast her about everything that's going to do today and what I've learned and all that stuff. But if I take a step back and I talk to her in a slower pace, I talk to her in a manner of not so much a task. Remember what I said, leading with the person, right, and then getting the task. If I lead with that, if I understand Tara and understand that she's just a little bit slower paced, needs a little bit more time to get into her day, and we don't talk business at first up, just that little tweak of me understanding that has totally revolutionized our marriage, because it now starts off on a good foot rather than how it was before, where it was conflict, right? Because I didn't understand her. I like, what's wrong with you? Why don't you get this? We have a business to run. We want to do this. We want to do that. But until I got this concept, it just was not working well for me. And that's why we had the issues at the 10-year mark, to where it was going to end in divorce. I was going to be another statistic until I got this concept. for sure.
So that was almost like your aha moment too, was like when you're at that 10-year mark for
Yeah.
you. Can
And
you
I can
share?
remember it. I can remember it like it was yesterday. The aha moment was when I went to my sister-in-law's house. We live in the same neighborhood. My brother-in-law. I was crying. I was a mess. I was just a hot mess. And I was telling him, it's over. I can't believe this. This is all her fault. This is what is she doing? And all of this. And I was like, oh my gosh. So the aha moment was when I was walking home, because remember we lived in the same subdivision. I was walking home, and I can remember looking at my feet, and then looking up, and looking at my feet, and looking up, and that was the aha moment when I said, you know what? Whatever has happened between us, it's my fault. I have to take responsible 100% responsibility for what's going on. Because why? Because I'm the man of the family. I have to take responsibility. So that was my aha moment. To say it's not her fault that she was doing what she was doing. It wasn't an affair or anything like that. Physically, it just was not healthy. What was happening to us, and so that was my fault. She was doing what she was doing because it was my fault. So that's when I decided to get the skill set. And and Peter, it's really crazy. I am a communication major at at you know I've got a degree in it. I'm a pastor. This was we realized that I was a leader in the church, right? I was leading people, I was leading groups, and I was leading leadership or leading leadership groups, and but coming home and I wasn't connecting with my wife. So we all can sit in the pew, so this is why my story is like your message or whatever, is because I was there. I sat in the pews and I was leading. I was Bible study. I'm a seminarian trained guy, and I know all the answers and all that. But I go home and my kids weren't digging me. My wife wasn't digging me, and so it's like that's the aha moment. It was like I'm a hypocrite. I've got to learn how to do this stuff. So this is why I learned how to become more self-aware. And it was first learning, how I'm wired. So then when I in that process, I learned how my wife was wired. And so then I had to get the skill set of how does she spend money? How does all those intricate things about, what marriages go through? Because remember, in order to impact the mountains, like your friend from YWAM said, it must first start in the home, and that's leadership. My leadership, I had to learn how to communicate and how to connect and how to relate to my wife, because I can't certainly lead a church if I can't lead my home, if I cannot connect with my wife. And what I found was that all these skills that I now was learning apply to the business world. Because why? Because it's all made of people. People's the one who gives us their credit card if we have a business. People's the one who does the project for us. If I couldn't relate to them in their language, I liken it to I'm dating myself here, Peter, a radio. Back in the day, you had a dial, and I know it's all digital now, but it was like, woo. So until you connected to a particular radio station, it was like, woo, and then all of a sudden you connected, and then you heard the DJ or you heard the song. And I liken it now to I have the ability to connect to Tara and the people around me because I understand them. I understand why they do what they do. And when I had that understanding and I adapted my communication, now I don't lose myself. I don't lose myself. I adapt. And this is what we teach in a marriage revolution, is when two people adapt and we practice the 100-100 rule, which means as Chris adapts to how Tara is wired and Tara adapts to how I'm wired, then we're going to go closer to God. We're going to grow closer to each other, and there's going to be success in that marital relationship, which is the foundation of what you're doing, the mountains. We can't impact the mountains when our family is a mess. And that's what I had on my hand. And that's what I strove to and strive to be able to connect to Tara and to my family so that I could connect to other people in the church and then connect to people in business.
Absolutely. That's awesome. I guess I was wondering too, like when it comes to working on your marriage, let's say, I mean, because I think so many that would be listening to this, they would be, or watching this, they would be thinking maybe, well, my marriage isn't that bad. You know, we get along, we have fun, we hang out with the kids, we do the things, but they might necessarily feel like, you know, they're passionate, or you know, that they actually really enjoy just spending time with their spouse. I guess, and I'm thinking of like, we often spend so much money on things, right? And the Bible says where our treasure is, our heart will be also, or
Mm-hmm.
vice versa. So we're spending money, and it's showing like where our focus and our energy and where our heart's at. I guess we spend money, like we'll spend money on business events, like thousands and thousands of dollars. We'll get training, we'll get coaching, mentoring in different areas of life. And I just feel like so many times, like we don't see that. I guess, why do you think people, it's a blind spot on it? What do you think it is, why people don't actually want to invest in the relationship,
Yeah.
the most important relationship of their life?
Yeah, the most important relationship of life, and as well as learning the skill set to be able to relate to people in business. You know, it's what you said. It's a blind spot, and it's leading because we are so task oriented. As dudes, you know, our tendency is to fix. Our tendency is to build. Our tendency is to, you know, get things done. Where with women, they're more relationship oriented. And as we looked at our portfolio, the people who are working with the marriage revolution, I mean, not 50%, not 75%, 100% of them are women who are either dragging their man because for some reason, well, I know not, it's not a mystery. It's because we want to be task oriented. We'll spend money to make money, but we won't spend money. It's crazy. It's lunacy. We won't spend money or invest in what will help us make money. The key thing, like here's the bottom line: who gives us money in our businesses? It's people. So if you're not communicating with them well enough, we're losing sales, and it's mind-boggling, but it's a deception. Like we have an enemy. It's a deception. Like you're only rewarded if you get things done. You know, I had at a company while I was pastoring and leading churches. I also was working a Fortune top 13 company, and we the boss that I really related to, you know, and I rose up the corporate ladder teaching these things, the behavior, because I always known that I'm about people. But in corporate America, and you're based solely on your output, and their motives, their method of inspiring you was like, you get a paycheck, don't you? You know, and so what happens is we just lead with the task. We lead with getting things done, and we carry that over to our home, and that is it's just a natural thing. So it takes us, unfortunately, for many men, it takes a crisis for us to be able, and it did me. So I'm right there with y'all. A crisis to be able to wake up and say, you know what I'm doing is not working. I might be a pastor. I might be sitting in the front row of the pew, maybe teaching and preaching, but I'm not connecting with my wife. So that aha moment was pain. And sadly, that's where it takes most of the people. And so that's why I'm so passionate, is to help people and help couples realize that even if they think they're in a good spot, if they're not passionate, if they're not, if like, let me give you an example.
Mhm.
At the 10-year mark, I was I was busy raising myself up the corporate ladder. I was busy doing things, and I was busy making money. I'd come home on the weekends and I would mow the lawn. I'd take the kids over to their soccer games, their basketball games. It was just life. It was just life. That's why I thought was raised. I didn't have a good example. I didn't have a mentor at the time. And it's like, well, this is how you do it, right? You just go to work. And, you know, I had this saying with my son, well, someone's got to work for a living. because I was always, hounding him to to do something. Someone's got to work around here. It was such a mess. So the ability to see before the pain, the ability to see, to lead with people and get the skill set, which is what I lacked. And this is the warning cry. This is the what I'm trying to help people see is like, don't wait. Like, let me read to you. I'm gonna read to you something, and this is spur of the moment, and I wasn't planning
Please
this at all, but
bring it, please.
this was so powerful that it was a wake up call. That in my coaching session or mentoring session with a client yesterday, I read it to him, and he was just in tears because this is what happened to him in his life. And let me just read it. And this is an Honest Engine post. Just to clear things up, a lot of times when women leave a long-term relationship, the man's first thoughts are, well, she found someone else, or how could she do this to me? All these years together, and so much more. But what men don't think about is all the times she went to sleep feeling like crap because of all the times that he had disrespected her, or how he kept saying he would change, but never did. Men don't think about all the times she was there when no one else was, how she begged to be heard, only to be ignored. Men don't think about how she always put everyone and everything before herself. Men don't think about how her head tells her she deserves better, but her heart just screams for his. No, all men can think is, how could she do this? Women just don't wake up one day and decide to leave. A man's actions, his words, the way he makes her feel builds up over time, and eventually all his crap becomes this weight that she just can't carry anymore. When she stops venting to you, when she stops getting on you, when she stops trying to get you to see things her way, just know it's not because you won and she'll finally put up with everything. It's because she's preparing her escape from your toxic ways. So no, she didn't leave you to find someone else. She left you to find, and this is key. This is why I'm reading this, to find herself. And this, Peter, is what's wrong with so much. It's what plagues our society with divorce. We don't know ourselves. The man, the woman, we don't know how we're wired. And this is why I'm so passionate to where it has made such a shift to Tara and our relationship and to my relationship. It's good. It's made such a difference in my relationship with my family. Then I get a text from my daughter, and she says, Dad, you're the best. I love you. And she wants to be with me. How many families, how many people are 27 years old who are so distant from their family? Like, it's it's this reason, because we don't know them. I understand my children now. I understand my wife. I understand my clients. I understand. And without that understanding, you cannot have intimacy. You just can't. You're just surviving. And that's what I was doing for the first 10 years of my marriage. I was just surviving.
So good. So with what you're doing, you and your wife, you guys have served a lot of people. You've helped a lot of people get real healing, freedom in their relationships and their marriages to actually like one another again. Can you just and I think I've heard a bit of it, but can you kind of give us kind of some of the main things that you're trying to help people to encourage them in to be able to get that freedom?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing is to understand how we're wired, and we've said that, understand how they're wired. But where we go a little bit deeper than most, and you have a great interview. Yeah, these are great questions, Peter. Is that most people like they like information. Like I've been this way. I've always said that I get information, and we can read YouTube, we can watch YouTube, we can read things on the internet, and we file it. Well, in case I need it. And that in case always, for some reason, always includes pain. And then I'll bring it out, right? So what we do that's different is we take this information and apply it. Like like practical stuff that men and women deal with, marriages deal with, like how do you spend money? How do you handle stress? How do you raise children? How do you restore? These things that no one is really talking about, like the practical things that men and what do you argue about? How do you have conflict? Why? All of these things that we're just sweeping under the rug. And so what we do is that what we help people is take the information and then apply it, because we know information plus application is transformation. And where most people are stuck is that, well, it's in their head, but they don't know how to apply it. We've got a great there's a great mentor, not us personally, but he's written books, How to Live the Inspired Life, Jim Rohn.
Mm.
And one of his stories, he talks about how he wrote a book on how to make $1 million. And he tells this story about how one person will take what I wrote in the book and go make $1 million. Another person sitting side by side will take the same information, read the book, but yet not do anything with it. And then Mr. Rome, love his soul, he said, I don't know. It's a mystery. It's a mystery. I don't know why it happens. I've cracked the code. The issue is application. One person applied all of the techniques and the strategies and the mindset to be able to make the $1 million. The other person either went through self-sabotage or self-doubt, or maybe some trauma that happened in their life, and now they just don't believe these things. And for whatever reason, they didn't apply it. And so they stay where they are. They stay safe. They stay, well, at least I have a job, or at least this is happening. At least I can pay the bills, or whatever the case may be. So that is really the key, Peter, to be able that what we do is we take the information, we give you great solid information, but then apply it so that you can have intimacy, you can connect. One of the most, not favorite, or my favorite, but it's one of the most profound statements that our couples tell us, and this is key, is that I finally like myself. Because what happens is that couples, we think that we can resolve conflict as if I can just get this other person, my spouse, to think like me, to be like me. And that's not how you resolve conflict. And so for what happens is, and this is why so many couples divorce at the 8 to 11 year mark. The second highest is when they're empty nesters, because they've been chasing soccer balls or basketballs and take them in. And then all of a sudden you wake up next to someone, you're like, I don't even know you. So that's the second reason, the second group. But where I was going with that is the fact that, you're now polar opposites, and we want to try to change the other person to resolve the conflict, so that this other person can feel like an example I gave. We want to win conversations. We want to change the other person. I can't tell you how many times that couples have told, well, if the husband would just be this person, then I will be happy. And the husband says, well, if this person would just be like me, or just do this, then I'd be happy. No, happiness is an inside job. It starts with one person. And so this is why we say conflict, we're not here to change one another. We're here to change ourselves. And when two people get on that same path, where instead of going in different directions, they're now on the same path to personal growth. I want to be the best man of God that I can be. I want to be the best husband that I can be. I want to be the best father that I can be. And when the woman, the spouse, The wife says, I want to be the best wife that I can be to support and to love. I want to be the best mother. I want to be the best whatever. And when two people have that information and, and attack that, then they can grow together. And that's when the conflict will resolve, is because in order to be the best, you have to understand how you're wired, what God says about you. How do you think about you? Like, like I said, fast paced, slow paced. That's just one thing. Task oriented or people oriented is another. And so when you understand these intricacies about how you're wired and how the other person is wired, instead of trying to change them and try to relieve conflict by making them more like me or like the other person, then we can actually understand ourselves and be able to then um, resolve a lot of that conflict and be the person that God intended for us to be in the first place. Because if we don't know how we're wired, then it's a crapshoot.
So good. There's so many nuggets here that I'm thinking I need to go back and listen to this again as soon as we get off this call. But this has been so good, Chris. I really appreciate just everything, taking the time to share all this wisdom that God's actually given you for relationships. Because I think that is one of the most neglected things is self-discovery and really finding out who God's made us to be able to actually, we can't really love ourselves without knowing who we are. And I think you just hit it on the head. And I would want to know, because I've actually was already talking to you about this before, but resources, how can we actually get in touch with you? How can we find, what kind of resources can they plug into to learn more?
Yeah, if you have a specific question, just go ahead and email me at hello@themarriagerevolution.com. So that's our website, themarriagerevolution.com, where you can learn more. You know, I have a Instagram account, Chris_Borghese. And Peter, you'll put that in the notes. I'll spell it for
Yeah.
you. I
We'll
know
have
that,
this in all in the show notes for sure.
yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, the spelling of that is hard. But if you have an immediate need or immediate question, send me an email, hello@themarriagerevolution.com, or find me on Facebook, Christopher Borghese. You can do that. Or we have for women who are really interested in learning more, we do have a free Facebook group called The Marriage Revolution. And so when you join that group, and now that group is only for women because they are relationship oriented. So I talk to women, but we do we also we help those women who are in specific situations that it's just volatile, right? But we also help couples um, who want to make a difference in their marriage. And so just reach out to us either at themarriagerevolution.com, the website, hello@themarriagerevolution.com. If you have an immediate need for an email, or my Instagram at Chris_Borghese.
Thank you so much, Chris. And one thing that we always like to do as we close our show is just have our interviewee to share, just to encourage anything that's on your heart for the next generation of what you just feel you would like to share with the next generation.
You know, the next generation is to really, I mean, the key to life is to know who you are. Take one of the personality assessments. Any of them are good. Enneagram, DISC, Myers-Briggs. Learn about who you are. If I would have known that, I would not have went down paths in career that I wouldn't have gone down. I wouldn't have. Now, thankfully, it worked out for me and Tara. It worked out because I learned these concepts. Sadly, 10 years into our marriage, but at least I learned them, right? I owned it. I took 100% responsibility and I owned it. But if I could just tell the next generation, is that know who you are, how you're wired, how you operate, so you make good decisions about life. Because without it, you could possibly make wrong decisions. And that is a life of regret. And that's what none of us want. So I would really encourage them to take something like that so they can understand who they are in Christ and how God has wired them.
Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate it. Have
Thanks
a
for
great
having
day.
me, Peter. This has been fun. I enjoy
Absolutely.
talking relationships. It's my jam.
Thank you so much, Chris.